talk about sticking two fingers up at this gaslighting, narcissistic government, this abusive relationship we seem to have with the powers that be. That's what they were trying to do in Epping, wasn't it? Not in a particularly gnarly way. No, women going, we want our children to be safe. We want our girls to feel like they can walk down the street because one of your residents, as they like to call these people, was trying to touch her up on a park bench. Fair enough, I say. And I thought we'd only just gotten over the fact that Lucy Connolly was locked up. Glad to see her out. Glad she came out all guns blazing as well. Brilliant. I thought she'd be sort of cowed and beaten and broken by the system. But no, she came out fire and brimstone and fury and told it like it was. Good on her. But now it turns out that the organiser of the Epping migrant hotel protest was arrested last night. Arrested. What, pray tell, was her crime? Well, it's on suspicion of breaching a Section 14 order. Yeah, I don't know either. Well, basically, the evil thing that she did that required her being dragged down to clink was she held our flag, our national flag, from a council building above an entrance to Epping District Council Civic Centre. Huh? She flew the country's flag from the municipal building. What a monster! I'm joined now by Reform UK councillor Jaymey McIvor. Tell me more, because this is mad. This is mad.
It's actually depressing, Alex. And I know, as a politician, you find there's moments in your life when you see something, you think, that's why I do what I do. And last night, what I saw, it was just outrageous. Now, forget if a crime was committed, because I was there. I couldn't see anybody getting hurt by what Sarah was doing. By the way, she has just been released. I've just had a text. I'm really pleased.
How long was she in for?
Well, it looks like basically 24 hours in custody, which I find that in itself...
So she dared to fly the country's flag from a municipal building and is 24 hours in custody. What sort of sick thing is that?
Do you know, I think the worst thing about all of this is if a crime was committed there and then, fine. I've seen people in a shop shoplifting loads and loads on Christmas Eve and they don't even call the police. In fact, the security team don't even do anything. And yet you have... If a crime was committed, fine. Why was she arrested and dragged down those stairs, I think quite over the top aggressively? That's what I want to know. Forget the detail, the optics of what's just happened. This country, again, was global for all the wrong reasons yesterday. I've had so many messages from people in all different countries saying, were you there? What actually happened? This government, we know, hates the British people. We know that because they'd rather put the rights of migrants, the rights of illegal migrants before the residents of Epping, before the safety of women and girls in Epping. We know that. But what I don't understand is why the police, who are operationally independent from politicians, operationally independent, quote, why are they behaving like this? That's what I want to know. Because public faith is so important in the police. If we don't have faith in the police, we don't have anything. And the last email I sent today as a councillor was to the police. And do you know what I said? I said, please don't come to future protests. We need 2 police officers at the start in a car. We need 2 police officers at the end in a car. Please put all your riot vans and all your over-the-top aggressive officers somewhere else. In case you need backup, fine.
But this is the thing, week after week, we see wannabe jihadis marching around streets of the United Kingdom, calling to globalise the Intifada, i.e. wipe out Israel, waving flags with Arabic writing, no one knows what it says, shouting from the river to the sea, which basically means destroy Israel. Oh, everyone turns a blind eye to that. Well, then you've got the trans protesters, don't you, who are actually, at one point, they tried to encourage everybody to throw wee about the place. Throw urine around and nothing happens with them. Oh, well, that's all right, innit? But you hang your national flag from a municipal building and you're dragged into police custody for 24 hours, treated like a terrorist.
Well, this is on the same week that Essex County Council sent an email to their staff saying that if you're offended by the England flag, you know, we'll give you some support. Well, before the protest yesterday, the police said, don't bring anything that could be offensive. Define offensive. Since when has a democracy been telling protesters what they can and can't put on their boards? And you rightly point out the fact. I was walking down Whitehall the other day, someone shouted from the river to the sea, and they were doing it so aggressively. I spoke to a police officer, and you know what they said? It's allowed. So, and this is two-tier. We're seeing it in action. But the worst thing about it is, I feel the police are picking sides, and there's a common denominator. Whenever the Met Police are involved in Epping, it goes wrong. No wonder they're in special measures, and you can't help but think it's the Khan effect on Essex, I'm afraid, the Sadiq Khan effect, the man that cannot control anything, the man that has ruined this city, and you're seeing that spread now because Essex Police seems to be relying operationally on the Met Police. So I literally have said, and I would use this moment if I can, if there's anybody who works in Essex Police watching or listening to this, please do not come to future protests. Policing needs to be at a minimum. This is women and children with their husbands and their dads. And why are the husbands and the dads coming? Because I think they'd rather be watching the football or doing something else. They're coming because actually they don't have faith in the police to look after their women and children should something kick off. We saw the far left agitators be escorted to the last protest. And I can't help but think somewhere in the system, someone's earning a bit of money out of these protests, and they get a bit more money the more trouble there might be.
Paid for
That's
agitators
my worry.
Let's be candid. I've got to ask you something. Are there people turning up on the side of the protesters against the migrant hotel who are in it to cause trouble? I'm not, are there people who are going there, to basically try and provoke a riot?
I'll be honest, I personally haven't come across anybody campaigning against the hotel to be there that is deliberately causing trouble. I've personally not come across, but there's hundreds of people, I can't possibly meet them all. But absolutely, people from the left turn up for a row. We've seen that. We saw that on the worst occasions when they were escorted in. That we saw that, and escorted in by the police. So I just think it's just absolutely abhorrent. They arrived at Epping Station, pre-arranged, van pulled up, all the banners. And something people don't talk about? The mess that the left left. And I'm not just talking about the mess in the public domain and the awful scenes that we saw, but actually the physical litter all over Epping Forest, which is a conservation area. Our protests are met with volunteers that go around litter picking afterwards to make sure there is absolutely no mess at all. These agitators, they are awful people. And do you know what I want to know, Alex? What is their argument? What is their argument? That hotel, the Bell Hotel, is next to a school. There's been alleged serious crime committed against one of the school children.
Yeah.
And what is your argument? What is your argument?
What do you make of the fact? Because at one point, Epping Forest was really the vanguard of all of this. It became the nexus of the entire debate over these migrant hotels. The protests, which by and large seemed very peaceful, good, well-meaning citizens, largely women, actually had an impact. And you found there was the court ruling saying, right, OK, we're going to have to shut it down. But then, of course, Lord Bean, with the help of Yvette Cooper, pushed against that court case and has now set a blueprint basically saying, sorry, actually, the rights of those people inside the hotel trump yours. I mean, that must depress people in that protest so much. You must feel desperate.
Well, it's infuriating, but the situation in Epping is desperate. But you know what? It's spread across the country, and I'm very proud of Epping, actually. The Peasants' Revolt, I think it kicked off in Brentwood, just next door to Epping, and I think we're actually seeing a modern-day revolt from people, because, the people that are going to these Epping protests, the locals, they're professional people. I mean, to live in Epping, I'm not being funny, you have to be doing something right in life. Often those tubes are packed on a morning with people going into the city to work, and these same people, these professional people locally, are saying to me, I've never been on a protest before in my life, but they're coming week in, week out to peacefully protest against this hotel. But how dare the government go against their own people? Who the hell do they think they are? I think politicians in Parliament, with the exception of probably I can count on one hand, have forgotten who they work for, who they're there for. I think members of Parliament in the Labour Party should be calling the government out for this. Their job is to scrutinise Parliament. Let's not forget that. They have a job, have a constitutional role that we, the taxpayer, are paying them to do, which is to hold this government to account. This government is going against its own people and quoting foreign conventions in the process. And, Sir Winston Churchill was the Member of Parliament for Epping Forest.
Was he?
He was. And I tell you something, he did not establish the European Convention of Human Rights with the vision of it being used against his own constituents. Can you imagine? He would go mad. He would go mad. And all those men that sacrificed so much for this country, they laid their lives for this country. I mean, people seem to forget this. For peaceful democracy, for the
national
ability
self-determination,
to have pride in one's country. They died so we would have the beautiful green and pleasant land that we've got, where we are able to practice our Christian faith without any fear. And what we are seeing now, I believe, is this country is under attack. And the attack is actually coming from within.
Yes.
It's our own. There are English people that have been coerced and indoctrinated, and I simply have to look I'm afraid to say this, some of the professional people in the police force who are making operational decisions that I think are agitating women and children trying to stand up for their safety.
Yeah.
Look yourself in the mirror when you get home from work. Did you do a good job today? Because the answer is no. And so I urge people to not be put off by what they saw last night. We must peacefully protest. Now, obviously, people shouldn't get themselves arrested. And the conditions, by the way, were so confusing yesterday. So many people were confused about it. I actually made a point of sharing them on social media in advance to try and warn people, guys, there's actually restrictions on our freedom of movement, let alone our freedom of speech. We were told what we can and can't have on a placard.
This is the thing, all the rights of these people illegally breaking into the country are diminishing our own rights.
Totally.
Can we have a little listen to, the wonderful Home Secretary, Ms Yvette Cooper, on what she thinks about asylum hotels?
We need to close all asylum hotels, and we need to do so for good. But that must be done in a controlled and orderly manner, and not through a return to the previous government's chaos that led to the opening of hotels in the first place. Substantial reforms are needed now. In our first year in government, we've taken immediate action, laying the foundations for more fundamental reform. We have restored asylum decision-making and then rapidly increased the rate of decisions. The overall system remains sclerotic, outdated and unfair. So, as we committed in the Immigration White Paper, we will shortly set out more radical reforms to modernise the asylum system and to boost our border security, tackling the pull factors, strengthening enforcement, making sure people are treated fairly, reforming the way that the ECHR is interpreted here at home, speeding up the system, cutting numbers and ending the use of hotels.
The problem is, though, they make a good case about, we got to shut down all the hotels and everything. We've got to shut down the hotels. Not that we believe them. We've been gaslit by those people far too many times. But the problem here, Jaymey, of course, is all going to get a free house instead, which I think is worse.
Well,
I think sticking these people in these HMOs, down a residential street where there's no one seeing who they're bringing home, what they're doing in their bedrooms and their kitchens. I think that's even more terrifying, and I think that's even more of a pull factor. I want to know from you, actually, as a councillor, do you get eyes on about this stuff, or is it sort of squirreled away from your attention? Can you find out where these HMOs might be, if there are any planned, who's going into them?
Well, I think the problem is a lot of these HMOs are very secretive, and I think that's the problem. But I urge councillors to ask these questions now. But I don't want to depress you, Alex. It's something far worse than what you've just said.
No.
And that is that the members of Parliament that make up the majority of the House of Commons ideologically do not want those hotels to close. They would rather open more. And I do not believe a word that the Home Secretary says, because if she wanted to close those hotels, forget by the next Parliament, she could close them all by Christmas. We could leave the ECHR, arrest people that come here illegally, detain them and deport them.
Like Portugal's doing, like Spain's doing, like Greece is doing,
any country,
like any sensible nation under the sun.
Like any country that respects its own citizens would want to. But this government is made up because of a majority in the House of Commons of champagne socialists who genuinely don't think there's a problem with the hotels. There is no ideological reason in their mind to want to do this. They have no will to do it. The only thing that is making the Home Secretary speak at that dispatch box is the fact that Reform UK are going to wipe Labour members of Parliament off the face of the map. We've seen the polls. The Tory party is finished. We all know that, thank goodness, because it's their fault. And the audacity of the Shadow Home Secretary coming out today saying, who are these people? And I urge Conservative members of Parliament, the handful that are left, I urge them to at least think of their own personal reputation and their own constituents who are silly enough to elect them actually in May. I really, really urge opposition members of Parliament in the Conservative Party, because the Lib Dems, who are they? They're nobody, irrelevant. But they actually can do stuff in Parliament, but they actually should try, because they do have a duty. They are part of His Majesty's opposition, and the job is to hold the government to account. They aren't doing it. They're pathetic, and it's embarrassing. And I would almost urge them, actually, if they're going to talk rubbish, don't go and do the media rounds, because it's actually inflaming tension.
Did you hear Chris Phillips this morning on the radio?
Yeah, sometimes it's just best.
He said, we've got to shut the hotels, and they're like, mate, you were the immigration minister, didn't you organise those hotels in the first place? And then when they're asked, where are you going to put them? They got no answer.
They have no answers because they have no plan. They didn't have a plan in government. They have no plan should, on the unlikely event they ever get elected again into government. You know, these people, sometimes it's best just not to say anything at all if you don't actually know what you're talking about. And I think a lot of these news rounds, actually, they should just sit them out personally.
Oh,
and
gosh.
actually, how dare the Conservative Council and the Conservative Party parade Epping Forest District Council like they are the heroes in this battle for Britain, when actually it turns out the council missed opportunities early on to get this hotel closed. Apparently didn't even reply to an email. In fact, Lord Bean pretty much called that out. He said how poor the council's conduct has been. So I think there's some serious questions that need to be answered there. There needs some full transparency on that. But how dare the Conservative Party Central Office jump on that? I mean, I'm seeing all these things on Twitter, all these Zoom calls of all the Conservative councils.
The public aren't buying it,
Of course they're not. But it's
like, oh, wow, yeah, the Conservatives, they're on the right side of history.
It's insulting to victims of these crimes. That's what I think the Conservative Party need to understand. Because they let the borders be open and these people have come to this country and allegedly committing some serious offences, and many of these people have committed offences and got suspended sentences on our young girls, it is absolutely offensive to the families and the victims that the Tory party try to suggest they have a solution when they are the problem.
It's offensive to every right-minded woman in this country who now, depending on where they live, no longer feel safe. Listen, you've got to get across this HMO stuff. Make sure they're not going to start sticking them down, you know, residential streets. And because me personally, as a woman, I find that even more terrifying. Because when you think of that guy who's like, you know, touching up that 14-year-old girl, it'd been very difficult for him to take that girl into the hotel, however lax they are about, you know, people doing fast food deliveries and this, that and the other. And there have been reports from some of these migrant hotels of finding drugs, finding weapons, so on and so forth. But at least there's people going in every day, cleaning the rooms, you know, in theory, seeing what is going on. There'll be CCTV.
Oh, when they have their
hallways.
Weekly NHS health check.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if my grandparents could have one of those?
Oh, I could do with one of those myself. But the problem is when they go out into the residential world, there will be no eyes on. Lord knows what they... Look, I'm not saying everybody who's come over here to claim asylum is going to be, I don't know, making a bomb vest in the living room or cutting up Ket on the kitchen counter or turning, you know, the upstairs bedroom into a grooming palace. But the point is, some of them will.
And the problem is, until we know who will and who won't, we have to treat them all as the worst possible outcome because we're not vetting people. If you don't know people, you have to treat them as strangers, and that's what these people are. They are illegal strangers entering the country. We do not know who they are.
Coming from countries that largely are very hostile to us.
The data says it all. Look at where they're coming from.
When we get that data.
Well, look, we know the data we've got at the moment on crime and the nationalities behind those crimes, and then we know how people from those countries are coming here. They're coming here illegally. We can make that correlation, and people should be brave enough to talk about it.
Data. Here you go. Look at what's going on in Afghanistan. That's right. They're stoning women to death. Doesn't seem a female-friendly culture, that one. Jaymey, thank you ever so much. Always great to have someone in the studio in person. Thank you ever so much for making the migratory route yourself into Talk Towers this evening. That's Jaymey McIvor, Reform UK councillor.